What's the dumbest way you've hurt yourself? Once I fell asleep with my arms folded behind my head. I woke up with both dislocated, so asleep I couldn't move them at all, and the muscles so tight from trying to pull the joint back in that nothing moved right anymore. I will say though, while it was a scary long few minutes trying to untangle my arms, I wasn't actually hurt. My family lacks some of the connective tissue you're supposed to have in your joints, so my arms can be pulled out of the socket without severe injury, as long as they don't get yanked too hard. But man, was that a weird, unpleasant feeling. I took the old fan off, and attached the new fan, but let it hang so I check that the lights work separate from the fan. Then I got distracted, and then went back to wiring up the fan part. I reached in, and that's when time slowed down and I felt this tightness creeping up my arm. It wasn't quite like that, but that's really the best I can explain it. Was like something was going up my arm. By the time it got to my elbow I pulled my hand away, but the pain lingered for hours. Fingers were twitching and fingertips were a bit red. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, but I felt like I experienced it over 10 or so seconds. I actually remember thinking, what the fuck is that? And then my inner voice saying, it's electricity, you dumb bastard. LOL. I've had shocks before, mostly static. But that was lingering. Not a snap shock at all. I don't recommend it. My dad and great uncle were working cows at my uncle's, and they both would get this weird sensation of tightness and dread every time they walked into or out of the barn. The uncle just thought it was his depressions and thought he should just quit cattle farming if the barn made him feel that bad. All the cows when finished would refuse to leave on their own wool and were just raising hell till they got back to the pasture. Well, they let one of the last cow out of the barn and it just flopped over on its side. Its calf ran out after it and flopped right on top of it, kicking and screaming till it died too. Turns out the buried power cable to some yard lights he hadn't bothered to turn on or needed for years got crushed by a tractor wheel when it got stuck during a flood. Kinda similar thing happened to me. I was working at a furniture-like factory. We made the pieces for California closets, if you know what that is. We had a router mounted to a table from underneath with an industrial vacuum hose attached over top that cut wood in a specific shape based on the jig. They both turned on with the flip of a single switch. So I'm using the router, and the sawdust isn't being sucked up. So, I did the thing everyone does when a vacuum seems to not be working. I went to check its suction, by sticking my hand in the area where the router and the hose meet. The router, being connected to same switch as the vacuum, was still on as well. My middle finger took the brunt of it. I broke the bone on my finger, and in the split second my fingers were in there, the router hit it 3 times. It was just fantastic. Every goddamn major accident I've had in the past 3 years is my fucking cat's fault. Torn intercostals. Diving to catch the fucker on his way out the door. Dislocated foot. Avoiding the affectionate cunt in the dark. Seized back. He jumped into a 200 pounds container I was carrying. Fucking random wrist pains I've developed. I assumed it was computer related, but last night the asshole climbed into bed with me and I pet him and he rolled just the wrong way to put pressure on the wrist and, yeah. Fucking asshole. I love him. I was showing off my ability to burp by swallowing air. I swallowed some air, my throat hurt a little bit, and I couldn't burp it up again. I didn't really think about it again for a while. Within half an hour, I had to leave work because of chest pains. I got to the hospital, they give me antibiotics, assuming that I was having some sort of bacterial infection that was moving very fast. They pretty quickly cleared any suspicion of heart attack or lung malfunction. Eventually they figured out that I had some air in my interstitial space, between organs in my torso. I had to stay overnight to have my body absorb the air. I could have collapsed a lung by swallowing air, or gotten an infection by tearing my throat enough to force air into my chest. The antibiotics probably saved me from that latter one. Broke 2 toes with pasta sauce. Pasta sauce had been batch cooked and frozen in family dinner size portion bags, flat so they stack and take up less freezer space. 300-400 ml bag, unsure of actual weight. Floor around freezer is ceramic tile. I had bare feet. Dropped sauce pack and it fell thin edge down. Acts like a toe murdering dull knife smashing into my toes and getting no resistance the other side from the ceramic tiles. They took so long to heal, but all anyone could do is buddy strap and splint them because they were clean breaks. 3 months of full whack, then another 2 of strapping without splint. I once ate Waffle House twice in one day. Then I didn't poop for 5 days. I truly thought I was gonna rupture an organ. I was in serious pain and my co-workers were like, maybe you should see a doctor. To which I said, the only doctor I'm gonna be seeing is the medical examiner. I took a couple doses of laxatives and prepared for the worst. Turns out, when you're so ridiculously constipated, laxatives just bring you back to normal. Organs still intact for now. As a kid I wanted to imitate a TV show where they did different challenges in an old prison fort. One challenge had the contestants jumping on a contraption that made cannonballs fly and they needed to hit some targets. The genius I was as a 6-year-old trying to replicate it, I built my contraption with a wooden plank that I balanced on a rock like a seesaw, then I put a rock on one side and jumped on the other side. Guess what happened? The rock flew right in my face. I did not get seriously hurt, but half my face was blue for quite some time after. Recently my mom bought me a red fish at the market, dead, to eat, and I was super excited and wanted to send a pic of the fish to my dad since it looked hella cool. So I asked my boy to take a picture of it since it was too big to hold it with one hand. I realized the light in the kitchen was bad and decided to take the picture outside in the garden. Since I was so excited, I walked very fast and was full of happiness holding my red fish and about to take a nice pic in the garden. I ended up missing a step up and flew into the garden. My red fish flew far beyond me. My ankle never hurted so badly before. I wasn't able to get up, so my boy brought me the fish and took a picture of me holding it while laying in the grass. My tape is torn, but I got a great pic of the fish. Smiley face. I hate this story so much. I've heard so many stories of doctors giving shitty diagnoses from underestimating the pain of their patients, those patients suffering for years, and then finally finding a doctor who will actually take them seriously and really look at them. Something similar happened to my mom, who was having persistent foot pain for decades and no doctor would tell her anything useful, but eventually she found a doctor who actually gave a damn and found the issue. From what I've heard and read, this is especially true for women, overweight/obese people, and doubly so for overweight/obese women. The doctor is supposed to be the person you can trust to look at your health issues and tell you how to fix them. When they continually fail at that role, it's so hard to have any amount of security in your health care. One time in grade school I was at my gym class and there was this table against a wall that had wheels and normally everyone in the class would sit on the table while we waited for our coach. So one time I wanted to fake hurting myself to skip the class. So when everyone got off the table I was still sitting there and I slowly leaned back against the wall carefully pushing the table from under me. Then the table moved really fast and I fell behind the table, which was my plan, but what wasn't in my plan was to land on my arm and twist it really bad to where I dislocated my arm. After that I had to go to the school nurse which puts ice on my arm. Then I don't remember how my arm back, I just assume someone came and relocated my arm. Long story short, don't lean against walls while on a table with wheels. Okay, so this will make me look like a total ass. So 2 years ago I was down at our local GAA football grounds, while one of my daughters was training. I was having a mess around with my other girl the goal. Ball went into the goal, and through a hole in the net. I tried putting my foot through the hole to get the ball, but my director ran around and got the ball and ran off with it. I went to give chase, but my foot was still in the hole in the net. I upended myself, came down hard on my chest and fractured 4 ribs. When I was little I asked my mother when we were gardening what the knob in the middle of the shears did. When she didn't answer I turned it anyway. The shears didn't seem to change in any noticeable way until I tried to close them and I found out that it was to make the blades easier or harder to open. I put in the amount of force I expected to need to use to close them, but it was now drastically too much and I closed them so quickly that I lost control and they cut my upper lip in half. It's a cool scar. That's a long list. Cutting my fingers while cleaning the dishwasher ain't even top 10. Braking with front brakes on the bike might be top 5 other than that. I have been allowed to drink beer at 16. Germany, fuck yeah. Balancing drunk on a 2-finger wide, diameter, dash round, rail. broached 2 of my ribs. I was skiing a few times back in those days, before Corona. My skies are wide, I am an amateur free skier so to say. Friends jumped over some bums while I took another bum that was actually a tree, both binding went off and I had a flat landing in 90 cm powder. I didn't hurt myself but yeah. Same ski trip it was so FKN warm, 5 degrees Celsius on roughly 2000 m height. I skied in a pullover, failing, my blue pullover was white, wet and heavyweight. Went permanently blind in one eye playing with a soccer ball at age 11. My neighbor kicked it just right so that when it hit the planter box on the side of the house it popped straight up 30 feet into the air. I tried to replicate this, unaware of the beehive inside the planter box. A swarm of bees engulfed me, stinging me over my entire body. But one little fucker went for my eye. He used his little legs to force my eyelids to stay open, Clockwork Orange style, and I got a very National Geographic-like memory of watching him curve his butt downwards, the stinger emerging from within, and him injecting my eyeball. 30 YRS later I'm still legally blind in that eye. I posted this in TIFU but one of the last time I ever followed a celebrity/Instagram hack trend from the Kardashians about taping your bust to give it a cinched look especially in low-cut tops. It didn't work for me and when I removed the masking tape it ripped out a good chunk of my skin leaving a nasty scar that runs from just underneath my armpit all the way to the lining of my underboob about 6 inches long, on both sides. Took almost 3 weeks to heal, had to wear loose clothing and no bra since even light chafing caused the scabbing to tear and the wound to reopen, and showering stings like a MF. I don't know which is the dumbest. So it's list time. I have been hit by 11 cars since I was 12 years old. I have never been in a car. They hit my actual body. I'm just stupid and don't pay attention. I cut my index finger on my left hand off. Twice. Once at age 5-ish, opening a tube of plastic bubble stuff. Didn't know about the pointed cap. But I knew my mom had surgical scissors. Second time I was about 9. I had been gifted a Swiss Army knife. And decided I could make my molded glow-in-the-dark sword or Grayskull too. Ended badly. Sewed back on both times. Cut my thumb mostly off cutting a watermelon. Nuff said. Surgery required. Camping in a hammock, went to pee at like 2 a.m. Came back, hopped into my hammock to go back to sleep. Actually hopped over my hammock, which I had hung at the edge of a small ledge. Fell ass backwards and broke my wrist. Went into shock. Slept it off and hiked out the next morning. Made coffee with a cup top filter in my boxers. Knocked over filter. Severely burned my junk. Like, should have, but didn't, because I'm a genius, gone to the hospital bad. Chopping brush in my yard with a machete, snake jumps out of bush mid-chop and startles me, so I jump. While swinging. And chop into my leg. going off the springboard high dive at the pool at about 10. It was the 10-meter board. Guy was on the low dive, 2-meter, who always did awesome tricks. Watching him, while walking. Walked off the side of the board and fell face first onto the pad around the pool.